you are trying to scale your business, you know how to deal with customers, but you've never really put any structure, any thought, and any concepts around selling because you're good at what you do. But in order to get bigger and better, you've got to physically go out there and start to sell. And a lot of people find that a little bit of a scary program. Oh, I'm not a salesperson, I can't do that. Whereas actually, what we hopefully will do today is kind of dispel some of those myths for you. Okay, just a little bit about me. That's not my car, right? I started off on a technical service desk in 1986, and kind of in the very early 80s, my mother said to me, do something with computers. It's the way of the future. Everybody's going to have one. At least you'd have a job for life. And it's true, kind of, they used to think if a job for life was you'd have the same job for life. But actually in the tech world, we've kind of had the same industry forever. We've just ended up doing it in 500 different places because it changes so frequently. And the reason that I started off being technical and made the switch was because the top sales guy turned up in a Lamborghini. So I was looking at getting an Astra van, a 1.3 diesel Astra van, and being proud of that. And the top guy turned up in a Lamborghini. I said, well, what does he do? They went, oh, he's the top sales guy. I went, oh, can I change departments? And they said, no, you need to be a lot better at what you do. Okay. So over the course of years, that's exactly what I've done. I don't just treat this as a job. It's a bit of a hobby. It's a bit of an obsession. I don't claim to be the biggest and best salesperson in the world, but I do have an awfully big repertoire of experience and knowledge and training and things that I've tried, things that have worked, things that haven't worked. So I want to try and share some of that with you. Sometimes it's been to sales to small businesses. So where you're dealing with the person who founded the company. And I don't actually see a huge difference between the size of the business that you have and the importance of what it is that you're trying to get across. It just makes a difference to the person who you're talking to. And we want to try and talk about why that's important in the future. I've also told to big businesses. So, organizations with 160,000 employees, globally well-known household names and household brands. And there's a big difference in going to see a small business where you sit in front of the decision maker and you can shake hands at the end of the meeting, or a big business that's going to take you 3 years to make a decision. I've also managed sales teams. So in terms of multi-million-pound targets and complex product sets, yes, been there, done that. And I've also worked alongside major brands such as HP, VMware, Citrix, and Lenovo, all the big tech brands that everybody's ever heard of. And that's me. That's what I've kind of been. Well, that's what I've been up to for the past 30 years. Doesn't look a lot on one slide, but that's me. Okay. When we talk about salespeople, what's your natural reaction?
A bit scary.
Would you want to be in a room of salespeople?
No, definitely not.
Right. Does that sort of ring true?
Yeah.
Do you recognise that at all in any of the sort of the so-called salespeople that you've got? They're very flashy. They're very pushy. They show off. They're larger than life. They've got a shiny suit. They never take no for an answer. Anybody bought double glazing and you can't get rid of the salesman when you said no? They won't get out of your house. Yeah. And the favourite one I had was last year when a guy came back saying he's got a discount because I had to get some doors done because the doors were leaky. And he said that he's got a special discount as a result of the Ideal Home Show. You ever been to the Ideal Home Show? Yeah. What time of year is it? Early summer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why has he still got stock left over and he's got a special discount for me in November? You're lying to me, aren't you? You're just trying to get me to close the deal today. So, that definitely was a bit of a see-through. There's a sales tactic going on here. And when we talk about sales tactics, a lot of these things of, they're flashy and they're pushy and they want to try and get you to go along. They're not really, we all believe that's kind of what the salesperson should be like. And that's kind of the persona that we preconceive that they should have. But actually, If you come across with any of those, you're not going to be successful. You're kind of the wrong mindset already. So, if you do turn up in your Lamborghini to your customer, you're not going to resonate with that customer. That doesn't mean to say you can't be professional, but you certainly can't be flashy, and you can't show off, because that's not going to create the empathy and the relationship that you want. And what we also hear a lot of is around sales techniques, and this is where this kind of jargon and the false discount stuff and the never takes no for an answer kind of thing comes into play. So if I could give you 20% off today, would you sign? Why today? Well, because it's a special offer just for today. Well, why today? If I have a think about it and I come back and buy it tomorrow, can I have 20% off then? No. Why? I don't understand, don't get it. So that concept of being pushy and trying to lie about, I can only make you this one-time offer. It's not a business offer. It's just basically a technique, and it's a way of trying to get you to close. One of the things about all of this is, if you come across in any way, shape, or form as techniquing somebody, you'll switch them off like that. And if you'll feel it yourself. If somebody is trying to technique you into a conversation, into an admission, you're not going to go. And the harder they push, the more you resist. So if you find yourself in that position of trying to technique somebody, you're never going to win your customer. You're never going to win the trust. So if you've got any concepts about, in order to be a salesperson, I've got to try and become part of that. I've got to become larger in life. I've got to have the shinier suit than anybody else. I've got to have the Lamborghini. I've got to have the gift of the gab. I've got to be a social animal. If you've got any of those, I need to change who I am to be a salesperson. If any of that's in your mind right now, please stop, because it's not true, right? Some people still think that's true. They've seen Glengarry, Glen Ross, or Wolf of Wall Street. We've all seen those great films, but they're not the sort of people that we want to deal with, right? I want to leave you with this as a thought. Not that I'm going just yet, but intent counts more than technique. What that means is, if I have my customer's best interests at heart, and they know that, and they can trust that, that will get you much, much further with a customer than purely a conversation around, well, if I can do you a discount by the end of today, would you place your order right now? So if you can get the concept of, I need to relate to my customer, I need to understand my customer, and I need to be empathetic with my customer, that's far more important. That's a far better way of building the trust bridge that you need between here and the decision you're about to get. Does that make sense? Some nods or waves would be good. Hey, there's a thumbs up as well. Okay. So the key lesson from this is, yes, intent counts more than technique. And so what do you have to do in order to demonstrate that? Real simple. 2 words: be yourself. Don't try and be anybody other than you. Okay. Let's also get some other basics about, if you're scared of sales, or you think it's something that you're going to have to put a lot of time and effort and a lot of cultural change, and you're kind of change your morals and everything, and change who you are. Let's set out some other basics around this concept as well. Customers want outcomes. Okay. They don't want nice features and gadgets and niceties, no matter how much you talk about them. They want outcomes. Okay. Why would you buy a drill? Is it because you want an 18-volt drill? Is it because you want a drill that's got a 3200 speed chuck? Is it because it's got the hammer function? Is that why you buy a drill? Is it because it's reversible? Is that why you buy a drill? You don't buy a drill because you want a drill. You buy a drill because you want a hole. Okay. So whenever we're thinking about having that conversation with the customer in a sales environment, it's not about what we've got. It's about what the customer needs to happen. All right. So why do I buy a drill? Well, I buy a drill because I want some holes. Why do I want the holes? So I can put my big telly up on the wall. Why do you want that? So I can watch the football at the weekend and relax. So if I can show you a way of getting that telly up on the wall so you can sit back and relax, would that be a good thing for you? Oh God, yes. Yeah. So now we're talking about the outcome, not necessarily about the features. The fact it's an 18.4 volt, it's got 3200 speeds, kind of beside the point. Yeah. What I've now got is the customer thinking about sitting in front of the telly of the weekend and, you know, having a very nice weekend. Or in my case, no longer being nagged about not putting up the shelf that I should have done last year. But then again, I want a drill with 18.4 volts, and that will make all the difference. No, it won't. What will make my life happier is the outcome of not being nagged to put the thing up, put the shelf up. So when we're looking at it, always focus on the outcome. It's not necessarily what we want to do. The fact that we've got some bits and pieces that will help deliver that is fundamental. If you can have a conversation about what makes your bits and pieces better than somebody else, i.e. you get a better outcome, or you get the outcome faster, or the outcome's less painful to change, fantastic. You can make your outcome unique. But always focus on that outcome. You know, I want to sit in front of the TV. I want to sit in front of the TV and watch football at the weekend. Okay, I can help you do that. I want to grow the revenues of my business by 20%. Okay, how do you think you can do that? Well, I was thinking that maybe if we had a little bit of this over here and some help on marketing and some help on some branding, we could make more of an impact. Okay, I can help you with that. Yeah. So when we think about what it is the customer wants to achieve, we think about the outcome, and we think about the time frame with which that outcome has to be delivered. Okay, so I want to increase the revenues of my business by 20%. Okay, by when? Well, this time next year. Ooh, that's a big ask. That's a lot. That's a big jump. So how do you think that's the best way to go about that? And then, okay, we now know what the outcome is. What we also know is if they're on £1 million and they want to grow by 20%, that's £200,000 better off they want to be. Unfortunately, if our solution is £500,000, it doesn't make economic sense to buy it. But if our solution is 10% of their growth, then 90% better off than they were, if that makes sense. Yeah. So if they can get the extra £200,000 by giving us £20,000, surely that's a good trade-off, right? So think about that outcome. Have a conversation about the outcome, not about what we've got. Okay. Number two, and this is why being you is so important. Don't try and be somebody that you're not. It's never going to work. Don't try and be something, you know, the flashiest salesperson ever. A decision is emotion wrapped in logic, and it doesn't matter how much sense I make. If that person doesn't relate to me because they don't trust me, I'm not going to make the sale. Equally, if the customer doesn't want to make the sale because they're scared of something else, no matter what logic you've got, you know, I will give you an extra £200,000 if you only give me £20,000. That seems like a really good trade-off. It's like buying a lottery ticket. You know, you spent £2 and you've got 10 million back. That seems like a good trade-off to me. But we don't all have winning lottery tickets, and we don't always sort of sit there and think, okay, right, it's in the cold light of day, I've seen a spreadsheet, I'm better off. If I'm not ready for emotional reasons to make a decision, I'm not going to make the decision. So when we talk to customers, we have to have that trust level first in order for the customer to feel comfortable sharing with us. Okay. And if they don't share with us, we can't understand them, and therefore we can't apply a compelling argument towards why they should buy our product right now. Okay. So when we think about that, when we kind of try to put that into action, it's always key to understand what is the human driver and how do they measure it? Because we need to apply it, you know, we want to talk to the human driver to get the emotional decision first and then the logical decision. Does that make sense? Some nods or thumbs up would be good. Thank you. Otherwise, I'm sitting here talking to a screen on my own. I feel a bit weird. Well, not as weird as usual, but a little bit weirder. I'll give you a really good example of this, by the way. I know somebody, guy 65 years of age, bought a BMW sports car. Okay, I guarantee you, absolutely guarantee you, that guy did not buy the sports car because it does 62 miles per gallon. I guarantee you that guy did not buy that sports car because it's only £145 a year road tax. All right, nice cheap road tax. It's a hybrid. Its benefit in kind is really, really low. None of that. All logical decisions made any kind of impact as to why he bought a sports car as a man in his 60s. It's about having fun. That emotional decision was made long before the rational decision of which type of car to have. Okay. Another key thing is always try and relate to your customer. Your customers need connections. They want to feel part of a community of like-minded individuals. Nobody wants to be the odd one out. So if you've got 100 companies in the UK who can buy your product that are exactly right for your product, nobody wants to be the odd one out. Okay. They always want to understand, though, how they get those connections to be part of that group. So when you're having that conversation with a customer, talk about things that they can relate to. And it isn't about necessarily 18.4 volt drills or sports cars. It's about how other customers have benefited and what they've done and why they've done it. So it's a bit like a story tell. So if I was to tell you about a story of somebody who came on a training course, who applied what they did, and suddenly they were 10% more efficient than they were before, and then they applied that in their business, and their business was just like yours, and they were doing similar things, you'd have an empathy to that story, and you'd have an empathy to the outcome. Yeah. So having that kind of connection as a buyer to what's going on out there and why people are doing it, and it feels very similar to what I've got, and I can relate to it, and I understand it, and I can see how, why, where, when, makes it far easier for me to assimilate that concept within me and within my business. So if you can get a good story out there, get a good story out there. Tell the story. Tell them, I was dealing with a company just like yours. You're a potato haulage company, and I was dealing with another potato haulage company, and they did a little bit. I did a little bit piece of work with them, and they saved 10%. And what happened was, because they were doing that, do you have that? Are you doing that with yours? Yeah, okay. And now all of a sudden they could see where it's worked for other people, and they can also start to visualize where it works for them. And if people are visualizing me in that situation, all of a sudden I've started to break that emotional barrier, and I can start to relate to why I should buy your product. Yeah. So stories and things like that are far more compelling than a technique, and they're far more compelling than a brochure, and they're far more compelling than we can do 3.4% on that. So sales features are good. Sales features help you make those relations and those connections, but always, always, always try and look for those connections. Another thing I want to kind of share with you, sales don't just happen on their own. By God, we wish they would. Oh, if only, if only, if only, if only. Even the big companies like Meta, they still have people going out and selling advertising. Right? Why? They've got billions of customers out there. Some of them run businesses, some of them have marketing budget. Why on earth do they have salespeople? Surely business comes to them. Everyone's heard of Google. Everyone's heard of Twitter. Why have they got salespeople? Because if you're not telling customers and making those relationships and making those engagements, if you're not doing that on a regular basis with consistency, you're not going to be the first of the list when the customer finally needs you. It would be wonderful if everybody needed everything we've got right now. Okay, that's not the name of an Oscar-winning film. That's just a situation around, wouldn't it be lovely if, But if nobody's heard of you and nobody trusts you, nobody can relate to you, you've got to do some kind of activity in order to break one of those barriers or all of those barriers down. Yeah? So when a customer's ready to buy, make sure they remember you. And make sure they remember you first, and make sure they remember you positively. And if that's just a quick phone call once every month, or once every couple of months, or once every couple of weeks, hi, how's it going? Yeah, good. Yeah, we've still got our widgets for sale. Yeah, don't need any yet. No, fine. But your business is going well, is it? How, what did you get up to much at the weekend? Did you see the rugby? Weren't we shocking? Yeah, great. No worries. I'll give you a call in a little while. they've had a good experience, you know, you're top of mind because you're always polite and you're always nice, you're always keen. So when they are looking, as long as they're the right customer in the right market, hopefully they should come to you first. Just because you phone them once, don't think that you're going to beat Google when they come up with a requirement. Okay, they won't remember you, because if you think about it on the other side, how many bits of spam email do you get a day? How many people do you get cold calling you and phoning you up and asking you and chasing you and all sorts of stuff? Quite a lot. All good activity, all activity that needs to happen for good commercial reasons. But if you get a bad experience, you're never going back. And if you've never heard of somebody, you're never going to go and look for them, right? So you do need to be having that activity, building those relationships, building those bridges. And it's about activity, activity, and activity. Okay. What we've got on the left is our funnel. Everybody should have a funnel. Okay. If you haven't, we'll talk about what that means and how you get to it in a few minutes. Always have a funnel. Okay. You will, over time, if you haven't already, you will have a metric that says for every customer that I win, I've quoted and had opportunities for, and I've lost some. Okay. So just for where we are today, let's just say that for every customer I've got, I've made 3 quotes and I've lost 2. Why you've lost 2, we can analyze that later, but just for metrics, I know that in stage 5 of my funnel, I need 3 things going on in order to win a customer. Your business plan, I guess, tells you how many customers you need, how quickly you need to acquire them, how frequently you need to acquire them. Yeah. So that then leads you to, in order to do that, I need sales qualified leads. There is a difference between the 2 levels, level 3 and level 4. They are different, subtly different. Okay. So level 3, a marketing qualified lead. If I know from experience of working in your business that for every customer, I need 3 opportunities. And for every opportunity, I need 2 inquiries. I know that at level number 3, I need 6 inquiries to get a customer. Okay. Does that make sense? Our trick is between level 3 and level 4 of understanding who can buy, why they're going to buy, and when they're going to buy. So that is the sales part of it. And there is a very, very, very good reason that we don't try and take every customer and every lead and turn them into a customer, because not everybody's going to buy. Some people are thinking about it for next year. Some people are just curious. Some people would like to do it, but it's too expensive, or it doesn't quite fit. It wasn't the color they wanted. It wasn't the length of time they wanted to achieve it in, whatever. There'll be a reason why it seemed like a good idea at the time, but now it isn't. Okay. We need to understand who they are, because the most important thing you've got in your life is time. Without time focused on good quality outcomes, you're going to struggle. So the quicker we can get into those sales qualified leads where we know there isn't a reason to buy, a time frame to buy, some budget, some money available to make that decision, and we're talking to the right people. If we've got that at level 4, we know that we just have to follow our process to get to level 6. Yeah. And if we don't know those metrics, we do need to know those metrics so that we can drive our marketing activities and our connection activities higher up the funnel in order to keep that new acquisition of customer ratio, the new pace of customer acquisition on track for the business plan. Yeah. And I do know that every good fight has a strategy, and every strategy fails the first time you get punched in the face. Right. So we will see peaks, troughs, humps, bumps, crashes, disasters, nightmares, huge celebrations, wonderful wins. There's everything that, you name it, it's all in there somewhere, somehow. Yeah. But if we can get that process, repeatable process, for one customer, there's 3 opportunities. For 3 opportunities, I need 6 qualified leads. And for 6 qualified leads, I need 12 inquiries. If you understand that metric in your business, you can drive your customer acquisition pace the way that you need to achieve it. So if you need a new customer a week or a new customer every 3 months, try and understand that metric from inquiry through to close, because that's really important. I'm hoping that further up, you've done your prospect and lead capture piece. So you know who's in your market, who's in your territory, which ones are of the right size, which ones are of the right credit rating, if that's one of your scoring criteria. You know who your market is, and therefore you're nurturing that appropriately. That's more of a marketing conversation than the sales conversation, but the two do go hand in hand. Okay. With me so far? Scared?
So sorry, Nick, these sort of figures you're talking about, these sort of like university accepted figures, and is this just kind of your own?
No, these are figures that I'm giving you just based upon examples.
Right.
But in a lot of large organizations, you'll tend to find that those examples are relatively more common than you'd like to think. So if you look at a sale, in one of my previous sales teams, I had 11 sales guys, and each sales guy had a target. But what I wanted from them is enough activity to give 3 times their target coverage each and every month, because I know that some of those sales would slip. Some of those customers would get to the, they put out a tender. We're one of 3 in the tender. So we've got a 33% chance of winning it. And actually, if we're not the incumbent, we've probably only got a 5% chance of winning it. But if we're that innovative and we're new, we have maybe a better chance of winning it, but we just don't know with a tender. So, but we do know that we don't win everything we go after. Yeah. So if you can understand your ratios of how many inquiries and how many quotes do I make versus how much I win, that will give you a view of what happens of your activities and what you need to do between levels 5 and level 6. Some people have different, if you're more of a fast moving consumer goods business to consumer, you probably have a different ratio than if you are very specialist and very niche and you've got a very, very tight customer base and very few competitors. Yeah. So I'll give you an example of that. I've got a friend of mine who designs conveyor belts for food processing. So in East Anglia, he's the only person that does it. So if you were from the Thames estuary up to North Yorkshire, if you wanted a conveyor belt designed, he's probably pretty much the only person you're going to go to. If you're over Wales or whatever, you might look somewhere else. If you're a multinational, you'd probably look at a multinational supplier because you want to try and replicate that in whichever country you're going to go after. So he knows that if he gets an inquiry in this area, he's got pretty much, he'll close to 75% of whatever, however many inquiries he gets. Gets 4 inquiries, he'll close 3 deals. Yeah. He knows that if he gets to a multinational, he probably will only close 1 in 10. Because he can't deliver in Europe because of Brexit and things like that. He can't deliver in the US, can't deliver in Australia, etc., etc. So it depends very much on understanding your market and your activity metrics to see exactly what that looks like in your world. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, that's good. There's a question in the chat from Ben and Tracy. In your experience, do all sales result from going through every step of the funnel?
Yes, but not necessarily at the same pace. Okay, so what I mean by that is that if you've got somebody who's made an inquiry, I wouldn't quote them. If somebody phoned me up and said, look, I'm looking for, I need a marketing program, and I'm thinking of doing some stuff online and some stuff over here and some stuff in the papers and maybe a little radio advert, how much would that be? I wouldn't actually go and then say, even if I knew I just took that and put that on my price book and said that's £20,000, I wouldn't then quote them £20,000. I'd still want to go through that. And if the customer's got a budget of £30,000 and by the end of your process, and you've done your process in 20 minutes, if they're sitting there thinking, oh, this could be 30 grand, and you say, well, I can do all that for 20, they might bite your fingers off. Yeah. But I would still want to try and go through that process to understand how, understand that customer. There's another reason for doing that as well, is that not all of them buy. And if I've gone through the process of understanding them and qualifying them, if they don't buy, at least I've got a 50% chance of understanding what I can do better next time. So Tracy, Ben, does that help? So where do we start? It's good animation. I think that's probably going to go on all night, isn't it? Stop that. Sales is a process, and this might try to give you a little bit more context around the kind of the last question, last conversation point. You will. This is a typical process. It isn't a process you have to follow. It isn't a process that, if you're not doing it today, that you should implement. It's a process that's kind of typical of where we go with most of our inquiries. So let's say, for instance, you get an email in your inbox in the morning, somebody's gone onto your website and they said, oh, I'm quite interested in that. Can you give us a quote for your thing? And kind of, much as you'd like to give them a quote for the thing, because you can then ask them for the order of it, I'd probably feel a little bit more inclined to then go through a process. So I'd want to know why that customer wants a quote. Lots of different reasons. If I'm of a cynical mindset, is this a competitor of mine that's getting their mate to phone up to get a price to benchmark me, so that when my competitor goes out and competes against me, they'll undercut me every time? Okay. I want to know that. I also want to know, ultimately, if you've made an inquiry and you want to buy something, when am I going to see your money? That's kind of important to my business. When will I see your cash land in my bank account? Because I'm really keen on that. You know, aren't we all? Okay. So I want to understand all the things around when that's going to happen. And we'll talk about how you structure that conversation, how you structure that part of it. Invariably, you're going to have to explain you, whether that's a demo, whether that's a PowerPoint presentation, whether that's going to see them and giving them examples. This is the point in that either conversation or your process where you make those relationships. Okay, the demo of, funny you should say that. I've got a potato haulage company just like you, and what we did for them was, or come and have a look at my software, it's fantastic, or let's take a look at some of the visuals that I've mocked up for other people that may apply to your business. Or, let me show you this thing here. Is that the kind of thing you want? You'd always want to try and encourage the customer to make that relationship at that point. If I haven't got the discovery right, my demo won't work, because I'm now going to talk about things that may not be relevant to my customer, certainly won't be important to my customer. Okay. If I make the discovery, if I do the discovery piece and I find out what's important and what's relevant to my customer, I then don't show them my part of the world as to why I'm the right person for them in my demo, customer's not going to make a lot of sense. They're not going to make the connections as to why you. Yeah. They'll see a bottom right price from you, and they'll see a bottom right price from somebody else, and they go for the lowest. So I've got to get the discovery right. I've got to understand what's important to my customer. I then have to relate to them as to why I'm important to you as my customer, and why my business is relevant to you, your market, and everything else. And then I've got to make a proposal to you of how my solution will meet you and what you're going to do about paying me for it. Yeah. Invariably, there's that negotiate bit. Oh, can't you dump 10% off because we're now best friends? Oh, isn't it your month end? Isn't it your year end? Don't you have to get your sales figures up? Yeah. I'm a really lovely person. I'm a tough businessman. I want 20% off. Invariably, you'll have that negotiation bit. Yeah. But then you close the business. So however you do that, if you get an order, you just get a check. If you get a statement of work signed off and issued, if you get your works order signed, whatever that process is, however you recognize it, and then you deliver it. So invariably, if you're selling to a business on a human relationship, get yourself a process that looks similar to that works for you. Understand why, understand when, understand how. Go to the next stage. Show them why, show them how, show them why you. Make the offer compelling. Okay. When we go back to the concept of, I want to grow my revenues of 20%. My proposal is I will help you to grow your revenues of 20%. But in order to do that, I only require 10% of it. You know, it's different to, I've got a widget and it looks great. Would you like to buy one? It's 20 grand. Yeah. So I've made the relationship with the customer. I understand what's important to them. I've told them in the proposal what's important to you and how I'm going to help you achieve it. At that point, whether we then know that what you want is what I've got. Why you want it is why I'm selling it to you, and when you're going to do it, and how I'm going to deliver it for you, and when I'm going to deliver it for you. So the only thing we really then have to do is negotiate about the final pieces. And ultimately, if you lead on price, it's a race to the bottom. And equally, if your only negotiation is on price, you've probably not got the first few stages quite right. So if you are negotiating it's on price, take a little moment just to reflect what's missing. People buy stuff because of the outcome, remember? So what part of the outcome don't you understand that makes your value proposition, I'll come to that as well in a sec, that makes your value proposition less valuable than when you start the conversation? Yeah. So if I want 20% of the revenues you're going to get and it's £20,000, if I'm helping you to get an extra £200,000 repeatable year on year, why do you now want to give me 15%? Okay, I'll only give you a 15% return then, because I'm not doing as much work. Well, you must be doing as much work. Well, no, not, because it's cheaper. So I'm not going to do less. So what part of that £200,000 gain do you not want? Well, I want all of the gain. Well, you're going to have to pay all the money to get it. Okay. Now I might offer you, instead of offering you cash on order, I might give you 15 days, or I might do stage payments. But I'm not going to go to the bottom on price. I'm not going to rip the bottom out. I'm not going to sell you, I can give you 20 grand's worth of stuff for £15,000, because why should I lose money on it? You're the one that's going to gain £200,000 by my works on your behalf. Yeah. So always think about the process, and whether you can do that in one phone call or whether you do that over the course of 3 months. Get yourself a process. Make sure you understand at what point you can transfer from discovery to demo and demo to propose, because that's also quite important as well. Yeah. I can't demo all the features of why my thing is better than everybody else's and why it's so right for you if I've missed a few key things about you. Yeah. So once I'm fully 100% sure that I know everything about you, and kind of, there's a police phrase, you've seen it, you're right. Anybody watch crime dramas, right? Yeah. Anything you say can and will be used in evidence against you. Heard that when I get arrested? Yeah, it's kind of also the same in sales, I'm afraid. Anything you say can and will be used against you when I'm trying to sell you something. Right. So if they say I need it because of, it's the because of that's most important. I need it by Wednesday. Why? Because I get sacked on Thursday if it's not here. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We can go to one of my competitors, but they're not going to, they'll deliver it on Thursday and you'll be sacked by then. So what do you care? I can deliver it on Wednesday, buy it from me. So I've got to get all of that discovery right. And when I demo it, I've got to make sure that I've hit all of the things that they wanted to see. When I relate to why mine's better than everybody else, they need the buyer needs to say, yeah, absolutely, that absolutely meets everything that I wanted. It ticks every box for me. There's nothing I can possibly think of that why I wouldn't want one of those. It's so good, you know. If the customer's thinking, yeah, well, I'll have a think about it, and you will get those that go, I want to have a think about it. It will probably be because their fear of change is greater than their motivation. What's it called? I'm forgetting what it's called. Fight, flight responses. Yeah, you all heard about that. When presented with something new, different, there's a change, there's an explosion, there's a noise, there's a woolly mammoth, whatever. Right, you'll either fight it or you run from it. Right. We often try and simplify it into stay and fight or run. But actually, one of the other things I've done is I've taught martial arts and I've taught combat for many, many years. It's not the most compelling thing for most people when presented with something that they're unsure of. Fight it, yes. I don't want one of those, or I absolutely must have one of those. Fight it. Or flight, well, I'll tell you next year if I'm going to buy one. biggest one that most people get when presented with something they don't understand is freeze. So, and if you get your discovery right and your demo right and your proposition right, you break that inertia. And believe me, there'll be a lot of inertia about people that are frightened of making decisions. 2 seconds, sorry. Today was not a good day to get a sore throat. So is this all starting to hang together for you? Is it making sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So you have to know your product really well, and like the costings and everything. You really have to be on top of that if you're going to make quick decisions about, discounts or what your negotiation with them. You have to know exactly what you're doing, don't you? You
Yeah.
can't just make it up on the spot.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen some really peculiar behaviors in the past where somebody negotiated to sell a piece of software to a customer, and the net result was we were going to make a profit of about £6,000. So it's quite a nice little deal. But in order for us to sell that software in the first place, we had to go on a bunch of training courses that were going to cost £12,000. Right. So we made a transaction. So yeah, great. Whoopee. And we've lost £6,000 in the process. Tell me, why was this a good idea? And kind of, okay, we hadn't thought about that. So what had happened there is we'd gone straight to negotiate without understanding the purpose and made the right proposition. What we should have done is stuck by our guns in the discovery piece of why that customer wants it and why we got to go down to that such a low margin in order to win that piece of business. And it's because we didn't understand, or the person in question didn't understand the product and the proposition to make the right, they'd miss the first 3 steps in that piece, and therefore the negotiation was wrong. Right. Oh, don't forget to deliver. If you've promised something to somebody, please deliver it, and deliver it well. Make them come back. Something that's really quite good is a thing called a case study or a reference. If you can deliver a good piece of work and get a case study or a reference, that helps your relatability in the future. Yeah, so if you're selling to solicitors, if you've got 5 solicitors saying, these are the best people I've ever worked with, they're fantastic, they've saved me a fortune, we've been so efficient ever since we got them involved, they're brilliant. Your 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th solicitor coming on board as new customers will be a bit easier because they can see themselves in some other people's shoes. If you're trying to sell to solicitors and you've never sold to one before, not having that relatable point is quite difficult. Something that you can keep in your back pocket in the negotiation phase is, if we do a good job, can I have a case study? And then I can give you a discount. And if the customer goes, yeah, all right, it's a bit of extra marketing for us. Yeah, not a problem. You've got a reason for a discount, which is fine. You've also got a reason to attract your next customer. So it's a nice little, not a trick, but a nice little technique. I said a thing before about the value proposition. You should always have a value proposition. So what happens when somebody takes your product? You should always have one of these. It's the key why. Why you? Why now? Why should I buy it? What will it do for me? Yeah. So if you can't think of one now, give yourself this task in the next 24 hours to create your value proposition. So when somebody buys from you, what's the outcome? What happens? And a good question to ask of you in this situation, of your prospective customers, is, in a year's time, once you've done this, how will you know that it was a good decision? Yeah. And if you're then thinking in terms of, it saved me 20% on, or I've increased my so and so by X, whatever. If you've got training services, for instance, if you're losing 10% fewer staff per year, and that I can save you so much because you're not replacing staff, you've got increased productivity, whatever it is you can measure, whatever the outcome is that somebody else will measure, is the key fundamentals of your value proposition, and always have one, because that will drive the concepts around how you ask all your qualification questions, right? And if you haven't got one, here's how you make one. Do they save money by coming to you? Yeah. If so, how? How do they save money? So are you helping them out because it's an outsource, so they don't have to hire staff? It's more flexible. They're not committed to cash. They're paying for things on demand. How do they save money if that's part of your proposition? Do they make more money? Are you getting them more clicks on their website? Are you giving them another service that they can then sell on to their customers? How can, and if so, what kind of difference does it make? If you've got evidence to support that, fantastic. So if your value proposition is I can make you an extra 20% on your revenues, and you've got another case study that says, here's 5 other people that have made 20% of their revenues by using us, isn't that a really compelling conversation to have? Yep. Or is there another outcome-based benefit? Is there something else? Is what you do quite unique? Is it the HR department will see something, the shipping department will see something, the marketing department will see something? How will you convince somebody that you've got the right product at the right time in the right market and they are the right customer? And that's kind of where you should be looking for your value proposition. So if you can articulate that in a very simple question, a very, very simple statement that they can question with, well, how does it work? What's in it for me? If you can get that right, you can frame your approach to market and you can frame your qualification questions in order to get your sales stages and your process tuned to get you a more successful outcome. Okay. So if my value proposition was, I can de-risk your business and protect you from a GDPR fine, which could be up to £20,000. How would that sound? That kind of, I'm saving you £20,000. That's what's in it for me. Okay, you're protecting me from risk. Okay, I like that. I can make you more money by getting more customers to your website. Okay, I can save you 5% on your diesel costs. It's those kind of measurable outcomes that you're trying to drive and trying to have a conversation about when you have your value proposition. When we talk about the right market and the right customer, I can save you 50% on your potato processing costs. Great. I don't touch potatoes. I do carrots. Damn. Right. So you've got to make sure that it's right for your customers and it's in the right market and the right, think of size of customer as well. This is another key thing. Sorry, this just came to the top of mind. If your customers are big enterprise businesses, the chances are that you're only going to be doing a piece of the work for them. So your proposition's got to be relative to the person that's going to be affected by that. So you're not going to have a massive impact on the overall finances and revenues if you were selling to BT, for instance, but you might have a significant impact on the department or budget of the person who buys telegraph poles. Yeah. So it's when you think about the right customer, and if you've got a small business and all they do is install telegraph poles, then there's only 20 employees, your value proposition has got to be right for that audience. So sometimes when you think about building it, think about who's hearing it and what they're going to read into it. Okay. Going back to this concept of any questions on value proposition? Because this is your 10-minute warning. If you haven't got one, I'm going to shut up in a few minutes. And when I do, I'm going to want to hear everybody's value proposition. Oh, look, everyone's disconnected. Where'd they go? Oh, no, they're still there. Okay. So have a think about that as well. When you embark on a qualification process with a customer, it is qualification. And I want to talk to you about what sorts of things we're looking to qualify with a customer. But the key thing you need to remember is, if you don't get that right, do not pass go. Go back, go reaffirm the question, reaffirm that they've understood, they've seen the demo and it's exactly what they wanted to see. You know, if you've got somebody who's had a conversation with you and they've still got questions afterwards, don't propose, because they're not ready to buy. They're not committed to that thing. They're never going to negotiate because they're not entirely convinced it's right for you, right for them. Yeah. Don't try and close a piece of business if you haven't negotiated, because again, they're not in the right position to make the decision to buy. Okay. If you've got everything right, everyone kind of, let me go back to one of the other things I said earlier on. The things that most people fear is asking for the order, because it feels we're British, right? We're very stiff upper lipped. We're very, very posh, and we're very, very impersonal. We don't like asking for things. It's not in our DNA. It's not in our characters. So asking them, can I have the order? It seems needy. We're not very, very good at it. But if you've got all the other bits right, saying, are you ready to place the order? It'd be great to go ahead now. As part of a natural conversation, it should be simple. All right. And if you are getting to that stage where you're asked, can I have the order? Oh, no, I'm not sure. Maybe, oh, no, we're not ready. It's because you've probably gone through one of those stages and not done due diligence on each and every stage effectively. Okay. So make sure that you don't try to jump too many stages and jump around within the stages. We'll also talk about measuring that and recording it and understanding it in a sec. Have a qualification process. What I mean by that is, if you understand what you're selling, you understand why people buy it, then you can ask certain questions around when they're going to buy it. How much money have you got for it? You know, if it's something they regularly buy and you're competing against an incumbent position, they'll already have budget. Oh, we spend 20 grand on a year on that. And you either look at that and go, ooh, I couldn't do that for 20 grand. Or you look at it and think, I could do that for 18, I can save them some money. If it's something they've never done before, it's a net new gain. Going back to the earlier thing, the value, I want to increase my revenues by 20%. That's 200 grand. I'm not going to ask you for all of the 200 grand, because that's silly. But if I can ask you for a bit of it, how much of it is value? How much of it is a good investment? So the budget is there if I want to make it available. I just need to understand how much money that is. Okay. I also need to understand the authority position of the person I'm talking to. That cops up a lot. What we've got here are two very, very simple qualification frameworks. BANT is one that a lot of people use. MANACT is another one that a lot of people use. So the authority, does somebody have the actual authority to make a decision? Do they have the authority to spend? I'm the manager of shipping. Right, so you get to choose who your courier company is. No. Right, who does that? Our finance director does that. Right, okay, can I talk to your finance director then? So understanding who has authority within that business and what's important to them will help you unlock the budget. The need, what is the outcome? Why do they need it? What does it mean to them? Yeah, and most importantly for you is timeframes. So I'm going to give you your biggest ever order, and I'm going to give you a biggest ever order 2 years from now. Oh, well, that's disappointing. I was hoping you're going to do it now. Right? Is there anything I can do for you right now that would start that relationship and get us off on the right foot that we can do quickly for you? You know, if I'm looking at cash flow in my business, I want to know when that order's coming in, because I might need to hire somebody for it. If I've already hired somebody, or I've just lost another customer because they've gone bust or whatever, I need to fill that revenue gap quite quickly. So I need to understand that time frame. If I've got materials to order that's on an 8-week lead time, and the customer wants something by the end of April, right now, if they're not going to give me a decision right now, I'm not going to deliver it by the end of April. I've got 6 weeks with an 8-week lead time. That's a problem, right? I need to understand when that order is going to be placed. If their new financial year is the 1st of April, and they're on a budget freeze right now, they're not going to give me any money right now. So why don't we have this conversation in April then? I can now spend the rest of March investing in my time in people that are going to spend money in March. When we look at competition, who are you competing against? This is one of my favorites because a lot of people get this ever so slightly wrong. So if you know your company always comes up against another company, we always think that's our competition. And to a certain extent it is. But if your customers never heard of them, they're not your competition. So you don't have to worry about them. Your competition will be customers' inertia. They are not willing to change, scared of change, more likely, or they've got somebody in-house that wants to do it, or they've always done it that way. Think about that as your competition, because that needs as much effort in disposing that as convincing the customer to buy from you versus the company down the road. Yeah. So it's not always an external competitor you need to be afraid of. It's quite often the convention and the habits that they currently have that you need to break, and that's your competition. And again, timeframes. There are loads and loads and loads and loads of these qualification frameworks out there. SPIN, situation, problem, implication, need, mean-cats, feint, medic, neat, note. Scotsman's another favorite one as well. Champ. You know, there's loads of these out there. Understand them and try to apply them. Try and learn them. Some of them they have to, you do have to pay a significant amount of money to learn. But just try and get your head around what is it that I need to know in order for me to forecast that customer, that customer's activity. And the key thing that you should always try and bear in mind is, if challenged, can I absolutely articulate why and when this customer would buy? Okay, I don't know if you work with a business partner. So Tracy, for instance, you've gone out to see a customer and you've come back and you've said, Ben, oh, they're brilliant, great customer. And Ben said, all right, what are they buying? Oh, they're going to buy everything we've got. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be wonderful. You need to know and have in your mind the ability to relate back to Ben, or vice versa, how and when that customer's going to buy. Okay, because Ben might be sitting there doing the finances and going, right, okay, it would be really good if we got some more money in August. Yeah, and Tracy, you'll be sitting there thinking, you know, we're looking at expansion. I need more people. It'd be great if we could get, you know, hire 5 more people by Christmas. You need to understand what that customer engagement is going to do for your business and when and why. And if you get into the mindset of whether you work on your own or whether you work with a team or whether you work with a partner or whether you work with a large group, if you feel comfortable at any point in that engagement with that customer, being able to relate at what point they're going to make that decision and why and for how much. You know, imagine you've got the world's worst sales manager on your back, or the bank manager on your back. When's that order coming in? If you feel comfortable having that conversation, well, you know, they've got 20 grand to spend. I'm talking to the owner of the company. They need it because it's going to make this much difference to them next financial year, and they've got to place the order before the 15th of April, because that's when their current contract expires, and they don't want to be without services. Well, you know, if you feel absolutely comfortable that anybody outside of your head can challenge you as to what's going on with that deal, you should be in a relatively good place to take that deal forward. If you had to relate that story and you feel in any way, shape or form slightly exposed, oh, I don't know how much money the customer's spending really. I don't know what their budget is, but I'm talking to the business owner and they say they need it and they're probably going to do it by August. Something's ever so slightly missing. So challenge yourself. If you couldn't stand in front of somebody and say, I absolutely know when that order is going to be placed and why and by whom, you want to go back and revisit that. So if you just get into the discipline of, I want to talk to my bank manager about borrowing some money. He's going to know when I'm going to pay it back. You know, I want to talk to my sales manager. He wants to know when are we going to make our target. I want to talk to my business partner and they're going to want to know when we hire them. If you can get that frame in your head and the discipline around obtaining that information, you should be in a healthy place. Oh, there's another one. Scotsman. Originality. As you sort of look at the various different models, invariably, the more letters they've got, the more complex the qualification process becomes. So make sure that if you pick one, it's appropriate to the size of your opportunities and your business and the way in which you wish to work, and the frequency with which you wish to acquire orders, and the cadence that your business has. Invariably, originality is something that has to be what makes you different to everybody else. Why you? Okay, we do marketing. Well, everyone does marketing. So what? Well, we do marketing in tartan skirts. Great. So what? It's always got to be original in the eyes of your customer in a way that's relevant to what they want to achieve. Okay. So, and I'd forgotten that one there. So last 2 slides, although it says on my deck 38 slides, a lot of them are padding and there are lots of bits and pieces. If you don't have one, it's very, very good discipline to have a customer relationship management tool set. Whether you want, and kind of the ones we've got here, Salesforce, HubSpot, Zoho, Prospectus, I think it's called. There's lots of bits of software out there. When you think about the various different stages, make sure you understand where your prospect is in those stages and where they are in terms of their approach to the decision point. So not everybody is ready to buy right now. Make sure that you nurture them with value. So if somebody says, look, I'm really interested in your product, but I don't need it until next year. Don't leave it until next year until you get back in touch with them. Nurture them. See whether you can do anything to bring that decision further forward by spending time with them, understanding them, sharing successes with them, so they can see other people's outcomes in their needs. You know, that relationship piece. Nurture them with value. Don't spam them. Spamming is bad. Nurture them with value is about adding to their thoughts and decision processes and educating them and helping them. Yeah. And have a process around that. Because if you've got a few leads, it's always nice to know when the money's going to turn up. And having a good product set in place to do that, where you understand the sales stage. Am I in the discovery stage with this customer? Am I in the negotiate stage with this customer? Yeah, and understanding whether they've issued a tender and I'm replying to the tender. So have I got a 5% chance of winning, or they're not looking at anybody else? I've got a 90% chance of winning. Understand your chance of winning, when you're winning it, what stage they're in, and what you need to do next. If you have a prospect who doesn't have a follow-up action, you've got a dead lead. I guarantee you that, right? People will not buy from people that don't put the effort in. You'll lose. Google wins. They'll go out and look for something that you do, and they'll find whoever's ranked #1 in the list and talk to them instead. And that is what we call the taxi rank. Okay. Back in the good old days, we had a thing called the yellow pages. Has anybody here phoned a taxi company? And it's normally AAA taxis as the first one, right? You ring them and they don't answer. What do? Wait for them to answer? Or do you put the phone down and you ring BBB taxis and then CCC taxis? And the first one that answers could be DD taxis. But as long as they've answered, you're now having a conversation, you're ready to buy. Okay. So it's exactly the same. If you're not DD taxis in that person's, adding value to that person's life, you're probably going to get forgotten, and you're probably not going to turn up and be picked when it comes to the fight of Google, which is why CRM is kind of important. Do get one and do have one. People like you. Be true to yourself. You don't have to put on a shiny suit. If you really want to put on a shiny suit, do so. You will look really silly unless it's the Christmas party. I've got a shiny suit and I do wear it at the Christmas party, but I will not wear it at any other point. Take time to understand your market and understand your customer and understand their processes. Yeah. If a customer's got 16 levels of sign off before they can get your order, understand it. If your customer places an order for something like they buy their diesel in a certain way, and you can bring a process efficiency to that to save them time, to allow them to do other things, understand their processes. Yeah. If they're ready to buy and you're having a conversation, you know how you can help. If they're not ready to buy and you're in the nurture process, you know what you can do to help them remember you and be relevant to their needs, and why you should be the first person they pick up when they need one in the future. Okay. It would be wonderful if everybody said yes. Respect that. Not everybody will say yes, but sometimes it means not now. Okay. So, when we get to, when we get to 35 employees, I need your HR software. Okay. Well, my HR software, if you buy my HR software, I can do you at 20% off by the end of the month. I don't need it just yet, but I'd really like to have it. So, okay, when do you think you're going to get to 35 members of staff? Well, probably this time next year. Okay. So it's not a no, it's just a not now. So I'm not going to lose sight of you, and I'm not going to lose sight of your outcomes just because everything sort of is not in the time frame that I would like it to be. And equally, stick to your process. Jumping forward won't save you time. Oh, I've got to buy your marketing services. I really need marketing services. £20,000. Here's my quote. Ooh, that's steep. Yeah, I don't think I'll bother. Thanks. Right. Okay. One of the things we always kind of bear in mind is that if you have a good experience, you tell one person, don't you? If you have a bad experience, you tell 10, 20, 30 people. So you don't want to sort of be having a conversation. You don't want that prospect that said no to you, that you're not going to do business with, telling their friends, oh, I had a chat with that company. Cool, they were expensive. That's not the reputation that you want. That's not where you need to be. What you want that person to say, if they're going to have a conversation about you, what do you want them to say? If you haven't won that business, you want, well, yeah, they're really, really good. Bit pricey for me, but you should see the stuff they're doing. It's really, really good. And if you've done your qualification processes right, you've stuck to that process, you're going to save yourself time in the long run, because the next customer who you've never even met, you've never heard of, who phones you up and says, oh, I'm really interested in what you do. If he's heard a good story or she's heard a good story because, of one of those connections and network type things of, I didn't deal with that company. They were a bit too pricey for me, but they seemed really, really good. That's the kind of lasting impression you want to make on your market. And you do that by being true to yourself and sticking to your process and understanding that customer and understanding what they're going to buy. You may also at that point, by the way, turn around to the customer and say, look, I don't think you're right for us. If your customer's if that prospect is too big, or they're too small, or they're going to bend you out of shape and ask you to do things that you don't need, you still have the ability to say no. So, but understanding that customer and being within that process will help you avoid having the bad customer syndrome in the future, because a bad customer will cost you far more than not winning a customer in the first place. So collectively, out of that, what can we all do to help each other? Q&A time.
Thanks, Nick. That's great. Yeah, just a bit conscious of the time. So if anyone's got any questions they'd like to give to Nick at the moment, don't be shy.
Because I do want all of your value propositions, please.
Has anyone got a value proposition they're brave enough to give to Nick quickly? You can do it anonymously if you want to put it in the chat.
Well, if you need one, mine would be to save a farmer DEFRA fines by helping them survey their farms using drones instead of doing it manually.
Okay, so that is
to save them risk, on DEFRA fines for farming too close to a hedge, for example.
Okay. Okay. When you think about framing your value proposition, there's positives and negative contexts. So a negative is they will be fined. Your positive is I can de-risk you. So think about the framing of that statement so that you're framing a positive. And you were there. You just need to finesse it.
Yes, that's one of the reasons I attended today, because sales is definitely not my strong suit. So yes, I appreciate that, and thank you for the presentation today.
No problem. Yeah. So just for me, what would the impact? What would the cost? If DEFRA said you farm too close to that hedge, what would the financial penalty be?
That is one thing that I'm still researching, but from kind of fast research, these fines can go up to like tens of thousands of pounds.
Okay. So for a small investment, they can. So there must be other things that they pick up on that, right? On that. So if you're doing a drone survey, it must be picking up on other things.
I guess it depends on what I'm surveying for, but yes, there could definitely be other products in there. This is one that I believe there's a market for specifically.
Yeah.
So I would set up my surveying software and therefore my drone to kind of look at this specifically. But no, there are loads of other things I could be checking for.
Yeah. Okay. This is just a little bit of a kind of a pet project of mine, is that I think that there are a lot more uses for drones, like drone spraying in the future. So rather than big heavy tractors, you send up a £5,000 drone with £2 worth of petrol in it, and you've done the same piece of work. So
yeah, and you can do plant health using specific cameras.
Yeah.
Gas leaks you can find. You can even just map out the farm. There are loads of things you can use drones for. I'm finding it really interesting to explore.
Yeah. And the old favorite when you're selling stuff, STMS, subject to measure survey. So maybe you could use it for part of that as well. So maybe think about when your value proposition, see if you can get some of those other elements in it as well. And I'm just because you've got one value proposition, don't say you can't have multiples. Right. So have a think about some of the other things you can do as well and what they might mean. So when we talk about hitting the right customer at the right time, the right message at the right time is important. So that nurture process. So, I can help you avoid a DEFRA fine. Could be something that's relevant right now, or it could be something that's relevant at a certain time of the year, because DEFRA do send a letter out, for instance, first of the year. So, but if the farmer's not ready to buy then, because they're about to sell the farm, your next conversation or your next proposition, I can help you with your subject to measure survey piece, or I can help you with aerial photography for the sale of your farm to help you increase the value of increase what you sell it for. Maybe that's the thing that lands. So
yeah, it's an interesting one. I've just kind of changed my entire business around because I was doing too many, but now I need to find the right balance.
Yeah. So when you think about your value proposition, frame it in the positive, make sure the outcome is right. Have a think about how the farmer will see the benefit of it in a year's time, and see whether you can articulate that in a very simple sentence. If it's kind of a bit like the concept of what they call an elevator pitch. So you get into a lift with somebody and they say, "What do you do for a living?" And actually that person turns out to be your best prospect, the one that you've been trying, the big fish you've been trying to land for a long time, but you've only got a couple of floors before the doors open again and they climb back out. So in the time of going between a couple of floors, how do you convince them, or how do you make such a great impression that you're of so much value to them that they'll remember you?
Has anyone got any other questions, or anyone else brave enough to do their value proposition for Nick before we go? Stunned silence, Nick. Any
I've
more
battered
questions?
everybody to death, haven't I, basically?
Well, if anyone's not brave enough now, they can always email me and I can forward it on to Nick if that would be okay with you, Nick.
Yep,
If you
not a
wouldn't
problem.
mind. Yeah,
Yep.
okay, we'll go with that. So if anyone's got any ideas, anything else they want to share about their value proposition, please just send me an email and I'll forward it on.
All your
Well, thanks.
processes, all your softwares, or whatever.
Yep.
Happy to answer some questions.
Brilliant.
I know it's been a bit of a word storm, but
No, I think it's really
hopefully
interesting, actually, Nick.
you've
There was a
got
lot of
stuff to action
information to
and do.
take on. There's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff to think about there. So I'm glad I've recorded this session. So this recording will be available to people once I've worked out, got enough memory on my computer to save it from Zoom. But I think it's one of these ones it will be worth watching again just to go through, because there was, a lot of things I want to think about, after the event, if you know what I mean. Well, thanks very much for everyone to come in. Really enjoyed that. Thanks again to Nick Sheehan there for a fantastic session that he's run.